Welcome, everyone. It is Tuesday, September the 22nd, 2020. It is currently 5:02 p.m. Central Time. I'm coming to you live once again from Victory Baptist Church, located here in Nowhere's, Texas. Nowhere's, Texas? Nowhere's, Texas. That's where we are today. We're in Nowhere's, Texas. What did I say? Nowhere's? I have no idea. I'm in the middle of Nowhere, Texas. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe I forgot to say coming to you from the middle of Nowhere, Texas, and I just said from Nowhere, Texas, and right when I got ready to say Nowhere, I tried to catch myself, and it ended up Nowhere's. I have no idea why I said it that way, but welcome. I hope you're having, if you're listening to me live, thank you so very much. If you're not listening to me live, well, shame on you, all right? When I'm live, your life should just stop and you should just listen to me, okay? Well, obviously it doesn't always work that way. Probably if I had a schedule, I could probably increase the live audience maybe by a few people. I doubt it, but I'm never going to have a schedule. That's never going to happen. Whenever I have the opportunity, I come out here and I turn on the microphone. And I just did about a 45, 46, 47-minute discussion about the essentials of Christianity, kind of a long, winding road, trying to build a logical explanation. I hope it made some sense. I hope it was beneficial. And as soon as that live broadcast was over, I got up and I walked down the middle aisle of the sanctuary here at Victory Baptist Church, and I went and picked up some stacks of things that, I wanted to record on. And I'm like, okay, this would be interesting. This would be interesting. Oh, I need to do this. I need to do this. And then I'm like, you know what I need to do? I look back here at the clock and I'm like, it's after 5 p.m. now. It was right about 5 p.m. I'm like, it's 5 p.m. I've been doing a lot of different things today. I've done a lot of different things today, but one of the things I have failed to do today is I haven't really had my devotional time of study. I try to have 4 times of devotional study: morning, afternoon, evening, and late at night. Again, it doesn't always work out, but it's what I strive to do. I mean, look, if you don't set a goal, you never reach the goal. But sometimes when you set goals, you do a lot of failing to reach those goals. But that's okay. At least it keeps you striving for something. So I was like, you know what? I have failed today. So instead of doing other things, I need to do something for my own spiritual benefit, my own spiritual edification. So I came back here, grabbed my Bible, something that I was reading the other day that really, really hit me. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to share this with everyone. So I know we have new listeners, so let me explain. When I do my devotional time live on the air, it's not some pre-planned, scripted out, oh, I could do this, in other words, it's not written to be a production to end up with a podcast episode. No. Whenever I do my devotional time, I'm going to make it very clear what's happening. If you can picture this scene, it would be like me sitting right here, the back of the sanctuary at Victory Baptist Church. You walk through the front door, and I see you. I'm like, hey, what's going on? You're like, hey, I thought I would stop by and see what you're doing. I'm like, well, I'm getting ready to have my devotional study. Come on back. And you come back here to this table. You grab a Bible and a notebook, and we just sit down together to have a time of devotional study. So it's not all planned out. So when I do these, sometimes not every T gets crossed, not every I gets dotted, not everything's stated precisely or carefully. And some people like it, some people don't. But if I'm going to have my devotional study, why not just do it with people around the world? Why not share it with everyone around the world? I think that's a very organic. I think it's very real. It's something I don't think there's any other Christian podcasters who do it that way. So that makes it unique. And maybe ultimately this podcast, when I do these kinds of things, it will get to the right people who like it, and the people who don't, they'll obviously just decide they don't like it and won't listen. That's up to them. But I think it's a unique approach, and so that's what we're going to do. All right, and I want to start this out. Now, this is a case where I've already done some reading on this. Sometimes it's just I'm literally I grab my Bible and we just start. This I've done a little bit of thinking about. But it never really turned into much. So now I'm going to try to flesh this out. We'll see where it goes. But this is the way I was thinking. Every person listening to me will have to acknowledge to some level. Now, some of you, it may be a far greater level. Some of you, it may be a far, at a lesser level. but we've all experienced a kind of a massive upheaval that 2020 has brought everyone. 2020 has been a year filled with upheaval. For some people, it's been filled with downright tragedy. I mean, we've reached 200,000 people in the United States of America have died from the COVID pandemic. And I'm not here to debate you and argue, and you can say, well, 200,000 versus the population of the world. That's, okay, whatever. I'm not here to get into an argument, all right? So I hate when I say something like that, and I got to try to tell people I don't want to argue because I know exactly what will show up in my email box 5 seconds later. So just hear me out. We've had the pandemic. We have some people are facing massive economic difficulties, trials. Who knows? You've got a pandemic. You've got all the economic difficulties that a lot of people are facing. And then you've just got the normal things that happen in people's lives, family issue, sickness, just all the other things. It can be tragedy, all the different things that can happen in a person's life, issues with children, with relatives, all the different things that can happen. And then we've got especially as Christians, we have just our everyday trials and struggles and difficulties that we face. You take everything happening in our world from the pandemic to the economic, and then you can talk about all the division in our country, racial, political division. We're in an election year. People are arguing and debating and fighting. We've had protests and riots and things burnt down in our city. Crime rates are shooting through the roof in many major cities. Murder rates are like an increase of 108, 130% in some cities. Just absolutely crazy, everything happening around us. So we've all been touched by it. It's been a time of trouble. It's been a time of difficulty. And from all the predictions, it's not getting any better anytime soon. Who knows how everything's going to play out by the time we get to the election day, how things are going to play out for our country. We are in a time of great upheaval, a time of great difficulty, a time of great challenge. And I think we could refer to it as a time of great trouble. And we are all experiencing it in different ways. We've all been touched by it. Now, here's one very important truth. Christian and non-Christian alike, our lives still, it's like you become a Christian, you're not guaranteed to avoid all the difficulties, trials, and problems and tragedy that occurs in life. No, Christianity is not, hey, here, become a Christian and you're magically protected from all the difficulties and trials and tragedies in life. That's not true. Christian parents can have their children get killed by a drunk driver. All other kinds of tragedies can happen. You still get cancer. You can still lose your job. All the difficulties, pandemic, all the different things, economic upheaval, all of those things impact us just like everyone else. All human beings can be impacted by the trials and difficulties of life. Christianity is no guaranteed protection from all of that. But as Christians, we are called to respond to all of that in a radically different way. We are to bring to all of that trial and all of that trouble a radically different perspective. We look at it from a God-centric perspective, God's sovereignty. We look at it from a faith-based perspective. We look at it everything from in the light of eternity, not in light of 60, 75, 80, 90 years on this earth. We don't look at it from a temporal, materialistic perspective. We look at everything from an eternal perspective, from a spiritual perspective. Our perspective must be radically different when we deal with the difficulties that life brings. If we don't have that different perspective, then that means we're not looking at it through the lens of our faith. We're looking at it through the lens of this world. And we all struggle with that. Sometimes we look at a situation and we're very biblical and we're very spiritual and we have an eternal perspective and it's great. And then sometimes the next day we're looking at it just like our atheistic neighbor is looking at it. We're practical atheists at some points. We're all guilty of that. But there's lots of trouble. There's lots of trials. There's lots of difficulties. And with that in mind, a particular passage of scripture I was reading, I think late one night, and when I read it, it hit me. It was just one of those situations. It was like, bam! I mean, it knocked me off the couch. I mean, not in a literal way. I'm using a little hyperbolic language. It had a powerful impact on me intellectually and emotionally. Because when I looked at it, I'm like, I don't know if this really describes how I respond to things. Now, I have to make sure we understand this, because whenever you do even a devotional study, you want to make sure you're very careful with the scriptures and we don't mistreat them and manipulate them and twist them. We're going to be looking at an Old Testament section of Scripture. So clearly this has a historical context. So we're going to look at how this individual is handling the historical context in which this person finds themselves. And we understand that's the application first. But I think there's some principles, or at least there's a challenge contained in this, that do we look at things the same way? Do we handle our circumstances the same way? I'm not saying this is necessarily there to prescribe this is the way it must be done, but it's demonstrating how it was done, and I think it should serve as a challenge to you and to me. All right? So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go back to the Old Testament book of Habakkuk. The Old Testament book of Habakkuk. If you don't know where Habakkuk is, find Nahum. Okay, if you find Nahum and then take a right, all right, that's one way. If you take a right and you get to Zephaniah, you went too far, go back to your left, all right. Habakkuk. On my Bible, it's at page 604. Does that help you? I don't know. Habakkuk. Look, use your table of contents. And now it's sad though. To be fair, it is sad though that sometimes you mention a book and you know that people are going to have trouble finding it. It's always bad when that happens, but we all have those blind spots. And if you look at the table of contents in your Bible and there's a book and you either don't know where it is or you can't summarize the basic contents in it, that's probably a book you need to start studying immediately. And if you need to study that book, tell me what book it is. And if anything I can do to help you in your study of it, obviously I will do so. I'll do some devotionals from it. But the book of Habakkuk, obviously it's one of what we call the minor prophets, not minor because of their importance, but minor because of their size. And we get into a lot of discussions with the minor prophets. You always want to figure out, okay, who the prophet was and was the prophet sent to the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom, right? If you don't know, Israel becomes a divided kingdom. Tribes go to the north, some tribes go to the south. You get there. So in many cases, they are sent to either the northern or southern kingdom, usually with a word of warning, a word, sent to them by God. And when we see this, look in Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 1, the burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. A burden. This is a message usually of judgment, a message of warning that serves almost like a burden to the prophet. They have to carry that burden, and the carrying of that burden is to carry this message and to bring it to the people that in many cases are not going to accept said message, not going to like said message, but the message still has to be presented. And that's true of Christians. We all bear that burden. We have a message to people that there is a God, He is holy, and if you do not repent and turn to Him, there is an eternity of wrath and judgment. That's a burden. That's a message that people will not like and will not receive, but it's a burden that we have to carry, and we have to present that. And pastors, there's times we have to present a message that the people are not going to like, and either you worry about your job or you worry about being truthful to the burden. All right, so there's a burden. Now, if you don't know the kind of the background to the book of Habakkuk, I'm going to reach over here and grab a Bible dictionary. All right. Again, this is just my time of devotion. All right. It's not all planned out. So I'm just going to reach over here and grab a Bible dictionary. For those who don't know how we do things in our church, every pew, I think, in our church has a Bible dictionary, because I constantly, sometimes in my preaching, will have everyone look up an entry in the Bible dictionary. The reason I do that is I want people knowing how to look things up for themselves and use Bible reference tools, and I like them to be a part of the learning process. So I've got the New Illustrated Bible Dictionary from Nelson's Publishing. Here's what we find, all right? Habakkuk, obviously, is a short, prophetic book of the Old Testament that deals with the age-old problems of evil and human suffering. Okay. All right. There's some thoughts I could have there, but that's okay. The structure of the book, Habakkuk's book contains only 3 short chapters, but they present a striking contrast. And the first 2, Habakkuk protests, complains, and questions God, but the final chapter is a beautiful psalm of praise. All right, so there's a lot we can learn about that right there. Habakkuk begins his book with a cry of woe. Injustice is rampant. The righteous are surrounded by the wicked. The law is powerless, and God doesn't seem to care about the plight of his people. Habakkuk wonders why God is allowing these things to happen. Now listen to that you can see that we can at least relate to this. Again, this is about what's happening at that time. We're not going to rip it completely out of its context, but we can relate. Look, injustice is rampant. Crazy things are happening all around us right now. The righteous are surrounded by the wicked. It feels like that, that Christianity is slowly but surely shrinking, which it is in many ways, that the unrighteous are becoming bolder and promoting their way of life and their worldview. In many cases, you could even argue trying to shove it down our throats. We can feel a lot of these things, all right? The law is powerless. Yeah, the law seems powerless. Crime, again, the murder rates. Just look up some of the murder rates in Atlanta, St. Louis, New York. I mean, some of those numbers are going through the roof right now. And you could start feeling like, okay, where's God? Where's God in all of this? Does God seem to care about the plight? Now, when I say the plight of his people, clearly that's in Habakkuk, it's referring to Israel. But Habakkuk wonders why God is allowing these things to happen. Now, so Habakkuk has kind of this complaint, these questions, and then God provides an answer, and the answer is absolutely shocking. God's reply brings little comfort to the prophet. He explains that the armies of Babylon are moving throughout the ancient world on a campaign of death and destruction. At the time when Habakkuk received this vision, the Babylonians had already defeated Assyria and Egypt. The implication is that Habakkuk's nation, Judah, would be the next to fall. Now that's shocking. I mean, it would be like right now saying, Lord, look, Lord. Hey, and if God was communicating you in an audible, direct way, now obviously we believe he communicates us through the scriptures alone today. But at this time, if we were to live at this time and we were to try to put this in a hypothetical situation to make this relevant, so I'm going to use this as an illustrative idea. I don't believe God communicates with us apart from scripture. It's only in the scriptures, all right? But just for illustration, let me give you kind of an example. It would be like looking at our world today in chaos, cities burning, crime, we're racially divided, politically divided. It feels like the whole world is falling apart. It feels like, things are getting worse and worse and worse. And you're like, God, I don't know what's going on. Everything's falling apart. What are you going to do? 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 And then God says, oh, what am I going to do? Well, China or, ISIS, okay, the Taliban. Yeah, just name something that you would be concerned about. They're going to come in and, well, they're going to take everything over. They're going to destroy everything. And you're like, whoa, wait. I wanted a solution. Well, that's how it's going to go. And for Habakkuk, it was going to be the Babylonians. It was going to be the Babylonians. Let's go to Habakkuk chapter 1 just to see how this works out. All right. Verses, if you look at Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 2, O Lord, how long shall I cry? Thou wilt not hear, even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. He's saying, Lord, where are you? What are you doing? You're not helping. All right. Okay, now look at verse 5. Behold ye among the heathen. Now God is going to answer Habakkuk here. It's absolutely crazy, his answer. So Habakkuk's complaining about all the problems. And in Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 5, behold ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your day, which you will not believe, though it be told you. Hey, you want a solution? I'm going to do a work among you. You wouldn't believe it if someone told you, but I'm about to tell you. Here we go. This is crazy. For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Hey, they're coming. That's going to be the answer. And there's no way he could be there. I mean, that's just shocking. So that kind of gives us the historical setting. That gives us the historical context. It's like, what is going on? Now, with that in mind, and the only reason this passage had any power to me when I read it is because I knew the context of Habakkuk. I knew this context. So I, for some reason, late one night, ended up in Habakkuk chapter 3. Habakkuk chapter 3. All right? And we'll go back to verse 12, just for some context. Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 12. Thou didst march through the land in indignation. Thou didst thresh the heathen in anger. Thou wentest forth for the salvation of thy people, even for the salvation with thine anointed. Thou woundest the head out of the house of the wicked by discovering the foundations unto the neck. Selah. Verse 14, thou didst strike through with his staves the head of his villages. They came out as whirlwind to scatter me. Their rejoicing was as to devour the poor secretly. Thou didst walk through the sea with thine horses, through the heap of great waters. So talking about a lot of the things that had occurred and were occurring, all right? So this kind of sets the scene. And then we read this very powerful section. I would love to do a devotional thought of the whole section, and I may come back to this in some other kind of teaching format. But verse 16, here we go. Habakkuk 3:16. When I heard, my belly trembled, my lips quivered at the voice, rottenness entered into my bones, and I trembled in myself, that I might rest in the day of trouble. When he cometh up unto the people, he will invade them with his troops. Now, as soon as I read that, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. There's a lot going on here. This verse is very powerful, all right? And so there's a couple of things I want us to think about. First thing I want you to think about. I want you to think about the reality of emotions here, right? I love this because this is not fake. This is not pretend. This is very real. We see the reality of emotions here. Look at the way it's described. Powerful emotions are described. Verse 16, when I heard, my belly trembled. This is an internal physical emotion. He feels it inside of his belly, inside of himself. He's trembling. My lips quivered at the voice. That's fear. That's trembling. That's a reality. Sometimes what I get so irritated by is, especially during the pandemic and a lot of things, you get these Christians saying, we should live by faith and not by fear. Faith cancels out fear. Well, here is someone who clearly demonstrated some fear. I think faith doesn't just eliminate. It's like they've often said bravery is not an action done by someone who has no fear. Bravery is action done by someone who is afraid, but yet they go on and do the very thing that they're scared to do, but they do it because they need to do it to save life, preserve life, or whatever the case may be, or it's the right thing to do. That's bravery. Well, I think faith isn't the absence of fear. I think faith is action and trust in the midst of fear, in the midst when you are trembling and you're fearful, and then you respond in by faith. And I think we're going to see that right here. It's just sometimes we give this weird idea. If you have faith, you don't tremble, you don't fear. I think no, faith is that very thing we grab onto in the midst of fear. The fear is real. We feel it. We experience it. We doubt. We struggle. But yet we cling to and believe. I think we have, I just love the way the emotion is being described here. Let's go through them again. When I heard, my belly trembled, my lips quivered at the voice, rottenness entered into my bones, and I trembled in myself. Wow. That's like brutally honest. Another translation states it this way. I heard, and my heart pounded. My lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept into my bones, and my legs trembled. That's the reality of emotion. Like sometimes we're like, you're like, Sometimes I think a Christian feels like if hey, you just got the news that your cancer is stage 4 and that it's terminal, and then you walk in, you're supposed to go, well, I believe in God, I trust in God, everything's okay. No, acknowledge, I'm trembling on the inside. My legs are trembling. My lips are quivering. I'm fearful. I'm scared. It's okay to say that. It's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to say, it doesn't feel, everything's falling apart. The key, the reality of emotion is something that's right there. It's right there. So that's the first thing I see. The reality of emotion here is amazing. But in the midst of the reality of these emotions, we see a response of faith, which is pretty powerful. Here's how one commentary describes this section. If Habakkuk had depended on his feelings, he would have never made this great confession of faith. This is an amazing confession of faith, is what we're getting ready to read here. But if he relied on those feelings, he never would have done so. So you can have the feelings and acknowledge the feelings. You can't rely on them. You can't trust them. They can't become the basis of what you do. But you can acknowledge them. You don't have to pretend they're not there. You don't have to lie. When he looked within, he saw himself trembling with fear. When he looked around, he saw everything in the economy about to fall apart. But when he looked up by faith, he saw God, and all his fears began to become still. And I'm not going to say they vanished. The commentary here says they vanished. I don't think our faith just makes the fears vanish. I think what faith does is we cling onto that faith while the fear is still there. We like the idea that, hey, we like the idea when Jesus calms the storm, right? And he says peace and the storm just goes away, right? Okay, well, that's what he did in that situation. There's no guarantee that, hey, if I trust in Jesus, he just makes the storm go away. No, you trust in Jesus when the storm is still rocking the boat and the water's coming in and you think you're going to drown. The storm may not stop. Faith is like, I'm still going to believe in Jesus, and I'm scared to death I'm about to drown, but I'm still going to believe in Jesus. I'm scared to death that I'm going to die, or that this is going to happen, or this is going to happen, but I'm still going to believe. I'm still going to trust. It's trust, even though the emotions, but the emotions are still present. It's not some like secret formula, believe and it all goes away. That's just not the way it works. So I love the fact that it starts with the reality of these emotions. To walk by faith means to focus on the greatness and glory of God. All right. Now, so we see the reality of the emotions. Now, look at a very interesting phrase. It depends on which translation you're using here. If you use the King James, you read it this way. So when I heard, my belly trembled, my lips quivered at the voice, rottenness entered into my bones, and I trembled in myself. Now, look, this is what I love this phrase. That I might rest in the day of trouble, when he cometh up unto the people, he will invade them with his troops. It's very much acknowledging the reality of the situation. It's very much, Habakkuk is very much knowing what's going to happen. He knows what's about to happen. He knows what's going to transpire. He knows exactly how this is all going to go down. He knows. I mean, God has told him, the Chaldeans, Babylonians coming in, it's not good. Okay. And so he's fearful. But there's that interesting phrase, rest in the day of trouble. See, it's not like, hey, I'm going to trust God and everything's going to get better. I'm going to trust God and the troops won't invade. I'm going to trust God and the Babylonians, Chaldeans, they're gone. Will no longer exist. No, that's not the way it works. That's how some preachers give you hey, trust God and all your problems are going to get better. Trust God and everything's going to work out. It doesn't. Judah was going to go into 70 years of captivity. Everything's going to work out. Just trust God and everything. 70 years. Some people would never even see the end of the captivity. Right? So don't give that false picture. I like the real picture better. The real picture is the storm may rage, the captivity may come, the troops still may invade, your house may still get destroyed, you still may lose your land, your people may die, and you may be a slave for 70 years. Trust God. Rest in the day of trouble. rest in the day of trouble. That's Habakkuk's confession here. Let me read it to you again. All right. When I heard, my belly trembled, my lips quivered at the voice, rottenness entered into my bones, and I trembled in myself, that I might rest in the day of trouble. When he cometh upon the people, he will invade them with his troops. Now, let me go back to a verse. I'm going to read the same verse in a different translation. I heard, and my heart pounded. My lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept into my bones, and my legs trembled. Yet I wait patiently for the day of calamity. Now, please note, and yet I wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. Now, what exactly, how does this all play itself out? All right, there's a lot of different things going on here. Now, this kind of clarifies what he's waiting for, why he's resting in the day of trouble, all right? Why he's resting. Yes, they're going to be invaded. They're going into captivity, right? There's got to be fear there. All those emotions are real. All of those emotions are real. But here's the thing. Now, and there's two ways of looking at this, and I'm going to try to clarify this. I didn't make it clear at the beginning because I want you to just feel the emotion. Now I'm going to try to clarify a little bit. All right, so here's the way it works. He gets the initial message, obviously, that the Chaldeans are coming in, the Babylonians are coming in, and they're going into 70-year captivity. But the prophets are also know that there's an end to that captivity. And when they do, the ones who've taken them captive, they will be invaded and they will be destroyed. All right. So there is I'm going to rest in the day of trouble, knowing that even though this may endure for a while, I'm going to wait patiently, knowing ultimately this will be made right and God will ultimately fix this and ultimately bring punishment upon the ones that God used to bring captivity and chastisement upon us. And the NIV really stresses that in the way it is written. All right, I'm going to read it to you again. I heard and my heart pounded, my lips quivered at the sound, decay crept into my bones and my legs trembled, yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. Now that really states it. The NIV kind of tries to state it that way. The King James just states it this way. When I heard, my belly trembled, my lips quivered at the voice, rottenness entered into my bones, and I trembled in myself that I might rest in the day of trouble. When he cometh up unto the troops, he will invade them with his troops. All right. So it doesn't really, you'd have to kind of figure out exactly what's going on there. The NIV offers kind of a different way of stating it to kind of give you the idea. So this is his response of faith, all right? We see the reality of the emotions, but then we see the response of faith. What is the response of faith? The response of faith is that he will rest in the day of trouble, that he will wait patiently. And the day of trouble, he's resting. He's going to wait. In other words, he's allowing the storm to rage around him. He's going to see the chaos, the destruction, the captivity. He's going to see the pain. And he's admitting the reality of the emotion, tremble, fear, scared, but he's going to wait patiently. He's going to rest in the day of trouble, knowing that ultimately God will do what he said he would do and bring judgment upon those who brought them into captivity. Even though he used them to punish them, God will ultimately resolve that. Now, for us, we're in the day of trouble. Doesn't mean we sit there and go, well, God's going to fix all of my problems, in the next 6 months. That we cannot derive that from this text. Remember, they were going to be there for 70 years. Some of those people would never see the end of that trouble, right? So let's be very honest here, okay? So how do we understand it? We rest in the day of trouble. We trust God in the day of trouble. We respond with faith in the day of trouble, knowing ultimately Christ will return and there will be a new heaven and a new earth where there's no more pain, no more suffering, and no more death. We trust God. In the meantime, we have to trust him in the midst of the storm. This immediate storm may not go away, but there will come a day that it will all ultimately be made right. We have to have an eternal perspective, not a temporal perspective. Though Christians who get a temporal perspective believes God's going to fix their problem now. He's going to fix the problems today. He's going to fix the problems in the next year. That may not come. That terminal diagnosis may remain terminal, but that's referring to your physical body and your temporal life. But your eternal life is guaranteed and secure in the finished work of Jesus Christ. There is going to be a new heaven, a new earth, where no more pain, no more suffering, and no more death, and no more sin. All right? Does that make some sense. Let me read this verse in a number of translations. New Living Translation. I trembled inside when I heard this. My lips quivered with fear. My legs gave away beneath me. I shook in terror. I will wait quietly for the coming day when disaster will strike the people who invade us. See, the other translations clarify this a little bit more. The King James, you're like, well, wait. You would have to kind of go back and put it all together and go, wait. He's waiting patiently while these people come upon them. I think it fits both. All right, let's make sure we understand this. While they're being invaded by the Chaldeans and taken over and taken into captivity, he's waiting patiently while that is happening, but he's waiting patiently knowing that there's going to come a day that those people will be invaded and destroyed as well. All right, so the waiting patiently applies to both. Waiting patiently, like here they come, here comes the Chaldeans, the Babylonians to take us. I'm waiting patiently, but he's waiting patiently for another invasion to happen. Well, I'm waiting patiently during this time of trouble for another invasion. When Christ on a white horse and the heavens open and he comes with a sword. Yeah, I'm waiting patiently. There will be an invasion upon all of the evil in the world. Christ will return. So I've got to wait patiently now I've got to rest in this time of trouble. The ESV, I heard and my body trembles, my lip quiver at the sound, rottenness enters into my bones, my legs trembled beneath me, yet I will quietly wait for the day of trouble to come upon people who invade us. The other translations really clarify it so that you can kind of see exactly what's going on. All right. Yeah, I'm going to stop right there. There's a lot we could talk about waiting patiently, and we'll talk to. I'll just give you one more that I think is interesting. So we have the reality of the emotions, right? We have the reality of the emotions, we have the reality of emotions. We have the response of faith, and the response of faith is again found in the King James, and that interesting phrase, "I might rest in the day of trouble." I might rest in the day of trouble. We're resting right now in the day of trouble. Why? We know that there will be an invasion, that God will come with his troops when he comes with his saints on a white horse, and there will bring judgment and there will be destruction upon this wicked world. The wickedness that has invaded will be invaded. The wickedness that has invaded this world through sin will be invaded by Christ, and he will come. Just in Habakkuk's day, that wicked nation came and brought judgment upon God's people because of their sin. That wicked nation was going to be invaded and judged and taken care of. The wickedness will as well. Now, verse 17. Although the fig tree shall not blossom, neither shall fruit be in the vines, the labor of the olive shall fail, and the field shall yield no meat. The flock shall be cut off from the fold, and yet there shall be no herd in the stalls. Sounds like a really not good time. All right? So now look, so here's what he does. First, he gives us the reality of the emotions. Then he gives a response of faith. Then he kind of gives the reality of the situation, okay? He kind of provides, I'm kind of making up the outline in my head right now, but he kind of offers us a reality of the situation. The fig tree will not blossom, although the fig tree shall not blossom, the fruit, neither shall fruit be in the vines, the labor of the olive shall fail, the field shall yield no meat, the flock shall be cut off from the fold, and there shall be no herd in the stalls. He's giving you the reality. And then look what he does. Another response of faith. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. Wow. The response of faith, I'm going to rest in the day of trouble, and I'm going to rejoice in God. In spite of my feelings, in spite of my circumstances, in spite of my feelings and my circumstances, that's how he's going to respond. But with rejoicing, with resting and rejoicing. He's going to rest in the day of trouble, and he's going to rejoice in God. Doesn't mean everything gets better. Doesn't mean everything just goes away. Doesn't mean all the problems stop. Doesn't mean all the fear subsides. The fear is there. The circumstances remain difficult. But there is a resting and a rejoicing. We're in a day of trouble. We have to rest and rejoice. All right. Now, there's more I could say. I'm gonna I'm going to continue to work on this and flesh this. Again, I told you this was kind of my own devotional time, and we're going to have to flesh some of these ideas out. We're going to work back through these. And I like doing that, bringing you through the learning process, because I think that's the most beneficial. All right, but I'll stop there. All right, that's 39 minutes. I could go a full hour if I wanted to, but I'll stop right there, and I'll allow you to jump in. What's your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this passage? What do you think that we can learn from this? Is this encouraging? Does this challenge you? Just communicate. newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. All right, I'll stop right there. Thanks for listening to this kind of well, it's not really impromptu. It was impromptu. It wasn't really what I planned, but it's my devotional time. And I know not everything always goes smoothly. Sometimes things don't always work right, but it's very real and very organic, and hopefully you benefited from it. All right? All right. Hopefully I get you to really dig into Habakkuk chapter 3. There's a lot going on there, and there's a lot we could talk about. And I have a feeling this is going to show up again soon in some teaching, because I think this is a very needed passage. All right. I'll stop right there. Everyone have a great night. God bless.